Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Prep Life Podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Anger. And today I'm joined by Coach Leemarie once again. Hello, Leemarie. Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
everyone. Thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk about Leemarie, how her post show has gone. And I'm assuming that a lot of people are going through post show feels right now, especially with the holidays coming up. There's extra challenges that come along with that. We just had NPC Nationals last weekend. So, there's probably a lot of people that are ending their season because really in the NPC, there's only, I think, maybe like one or two shows left that maybe in Florida and California, but that's about it. And then December is kind of takes a hiatus and then it goes on until about the Arnold when that starts back up with the season. So that's like February 28th is when things kind of kick off again. So there's a little bit of lull time. So we're going to just talk about, first of all, let's just start, Lee Marie, with your reverse diet. How is that going?
Mhm. Well, it's going great. I am just every time I do a reverse diet, I'm just struck again with how difficult it is and how disciplined you have to be. And I just think if people understood the difficulty of reverse dieting after a prep or just a cut for a photo shoot, even just a diet in general, how important that is and how difficult it is, it would totally change the game. I mean, I've had several athletes make the comment to me that the reverse is harder than the prep. And I
Hmm.
I don't know if it's harder, but I think it does take more discipline to
Oh,
slowly add in
100%.
calories while your appetite is skyrocketing to keep up the cardio when you're exhausted and you don't have a show in sight. So I mean, I was determined after this show that I was going to reverse perfectly. And I mean perfectly is like to me it's within that 95% range. That's to me perfect. Like I don't know if it's possible to be 100% perfect. I mean, even with like food labels and things like that, measuring cups and different things like that, I can't be 100%, but I wanted to follow it perfectly. And so that has been driving me and motivating me. But at times it does get a little bit like, why am I doing this? I am 3 weeks and 4 days, I believe, post show, and we're still doing cardio. We're still tracking everything. We're still on, semi low calories, but body is responding really well. And I'm really happy with how this reverse is going.
Yeah, but we just lowered your cardio and we've been tapering anyways. And I
Yep.
would say you're eating at least 300 to 400 more calories on average per day, especially with your intuitive day and your free
Yeah.
meal,
Yes. We did
for
add
sure.
those and that was really fun.
Yeah.
Added in a free meal, added in the intuitive eating days. We actually started because there was a holiday, there was Thanksgiving. So we added in that intuitive day and my body did so well. I actually hit a new low weight that week. So
Yeah.
yes, we
You're
have
like,
been
"Is
adding.
there another show?"
And then this week was the first time we took cardio back down by like a big chunk a day. So
Yeah, like 100 minutes.
yeah, a week, not a day.
Yeah, yeah, a week. Yeah, definitely that caveat. But you had mentioned that you wanted food to go first because you said you
Yes.
didn't mind cardio, and that's something that we both, I think, do with our athletes, is just ask them for permission on which one we need to be more intentional about. So if the athlete feels like they can keep cardio in, then great. Then we'll start incorporating a lot more food in the reverse.
Mhm.
If they feel like they can't really have the bandwidth to do cardio anymore, then, we kind of have to go a little bit slower with the calorie
Mhm.
uptake. So I think it's really important to know your client, know their goals. Like for you, you're different than some of my clients that just they really needed to like pour back into work and time with working. So they did not have time for cardio. So I had to keep their diets a little bit tighter. Um, work at a gym, so it's
Yep.
not as inconvenient to like get on the treadmill in between clients or something like that. Where, um, for other people like that work an office job, they just, you know, are really swamped at this time. And that was kind of like where we put the focus was pulling out like steps and cardio. So they felt like they were having some success there. But yeah, all in all, so you're a little different too in the fact that we pretty much right away. So most clients, I am not able to give them an intuitive day until way deep into an improvement season when they have normal hunger signals. So for those of you that don't know, post show, your leptin, which is your satiety hormone, is super low because it's released by fat cells. And if you don't have very many fat cells, you're not producing a lot of leptin. So you're not feeling satisfied. Your body is like primed to put on body fat because your ghrelin is really high, which is your hunger hormone. And like you said, there's no carrot at the end of this stick. Like
Mhm.
what I find a lot of competitors, and I'm, you know, totally in the same boat. When I'm post show, it's like, I'm a very competitive person. For a lot of people, that really, makes a hard line as to whether or not you're going to, like be a little loose on Thanksgiving or, eat an extra snack and things like that. Like if I know that I have a competition on the line and I'm going to be in a bikini in front of a lot of people and I need to be conditioned, I'm going to stay on my things, and if my competition's really far away, it's just hard to like play that mental mind game, like staying on it. So I commend you for sticking to it. But yeah, like the free meal and the intuitive day, let's kind of talk about why we need to add that for you because for every person it's totally different and what they can handle.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in intuitive eating. However, I think most people think of it as step one, and I think it's like step 87. I think that you need to learn a lot about nutrition. You need to be tracking your food for months and months and months, maybe years, which I have been doing, and you need to be aware of the foods and the amounts of foods that you eat and what effects they're going to have on your body. So when I asked Amy if we could do an intuitive eating, even just an intuitive eating meal or an intuitive eating day, what I was not thinking in my head was I want a day where I don't have to think about my diet and I can eat whatever I want. That was not what I was thinking. What I was thinking was I think I need a mental break from opening up an app and plugging in all my foods. So when I do an intuitive day, I still am in my head and making sure I hit, around 30 grams of protein per meal. I know the foods that I eat are not going to change that much. I'm going to try and listen to my hunger, but I'm not going to eat past fullness. I'm going to really watch myself around highly palatable foods. So I don't even really keep snacks or anything in my house, but there are things like coffee creamer or rice cakes or things like that that I just need to be careful about if I'm not tracking and be like, okay, what's my usual serving size? 3 rice cakes. Cool. We're going to do 3 rice cakes. Maybe we'll do 4. But if I start going down that line of, oh, I've got 3 bags of rice cakes here, it's like, whoa, no, like watch that. That's not the point because, like you said, we are primed to put on body fat right now. And so by doing the intuitive eating for me personally, when I'm right out of a show is not when I'm craving, like I don't like the feeling of being overstuffed. And so like especially when I'm really lean, I don't want that feeling. I kind of love feeling really lean, but when it gets me is when I start getting deeper and deeper into an improvement season. When you're kind of fluffing out anyways, you kind of get this throw caution to the wind, and I'm just having a, craving night and I just want to eat snacks till I can just, like doesn't even matter anymore. But so I thought, well, first, like within the first month or so out of a show, and I didn't even think we'd do it this soon, but if I can start doing these intuitive days while I'm still really lean and really focused and really driven towards staying lean and putting on lean muscle, then I can kind of train my brain to do intuitive eating, but to really pay attention to how much my body needs versus how much it might want, and try to find that balance before we get deep into the improvement and really work on that skill, because intuitive eating is that takes discipline too, because you're
Mhm.
not only listening to what your body is craving, you're figuring out why your body is craving those things and what will be most beneficial, which is finding that energy balance. So not overeating, not under eating.
Yeah, and you are the only person that I would ever give intuitive eating this soon because most people, like you said, listening to your hunger signals, they really aren't there. At this point, until you're about 8 weeks post show, that's about when most people start feeling real hunger signals. And even then, sometimes it takes longer. But the reason why I gave it to you is because you're highly stress driven. And when your cortisol goes down, your body relaxes and you actually are able to like digest your food and you hit new low weights. And
Mhm,
that's where the key is it was stressing you out to perfectly measure everything.
mhm,
So when we take that off the plate for at least 1 day a week where you can just mentally have a break from that, it's been a huge game changer because you hit your stage weight, like you hit below your stage weight after Thanksgiving, you hit your stage weight this week
mhm,
and it's it's showing in your drop in cortisol and stress on your body that you're able to respond to this and your metabolism has responded positively. Now with most people they also don't just wanna have a cup of cottage cheese after a show like you do. So so when you know your clients, like, you know that they're, like, going balls to the walls with sugar, and they have those sugar demons in them now. I don't mean to demonize sugar, but, like, when you have been eating
mhm,
extremely clean and
mhm,
have not had sugar in, like, several weeks, several months, whatever it is, and you introduce that, it becomes highly addictive to your body and you continuously will start craving more. I think that it takes about 14 days for somebody to like detox their sugar demons, so to speak. So if they reintroduce that right after a show and when their hormones are already fighting against them, it kind of makes a storm because they're already fighting those cravings and hunger signals that aren't correct. And then they're adding on top of that that sugar craving. So in your case, like, you probably ate more like peanut butter, more rice cakes, like I said, cottage cheese is like what you were craving after a show. So
mhm,
those kind of things, like those aren't gonna really spike that ravenous
mhm.
demon like sugar does. I mean, it makes you very, very hungry and it's like that dopamine rush and you want to keep getting those hits all the time. And you kind of have to white knuckle it through those 2 weeks of detoxing it out. Um, Another thing that I've noticed too is that when people are post show, they are very lax on their water, which water really helps us when we're hydrated. We're not as like we don't get those hunger cues as often because sometimes you're just actually dehydrated or thirsty
Mhm.
and it feels like you're hungry when in fact you just really need like some more fluids in you. So I've noticed that like a lot of people post show kind of slacking on their water, um, slacking on vegetables can be another thing post show. When they do that, it kind of creates that big storm as well because that fiber and all of that is like giving you satiety. So just some things to keep in mind if you are also post show and all that. So we
What
did the deload. Yeah.
Oh, I just was gonna say one thing on the sugar.
Uh-huh.
Just a comment because we did do an intuitive day on a holiday. It was Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And, that was one thing that was a huge red flag for me with intuitive eating. I didn't weigh or measure anything, and I ate a lot of food that day, but I did not eat any sugar. And I just know that after, a prep of, 20 weeks or so of not eating any sugar, my body is not ready to handle sugar. So I still have
Yeah.
yet to have sugar, but I've had, other things that are, sweetened with stevia or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I ate a lot of food. And so it was really more about eating good whole foods and just more amount of foods. But yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely would say stay away from sugar and you won't have to deal with that detox.
At least until your cravings are at bay and your
Yes,
hunger
exactly.
signals, like, absolutely add sugar. If you, like, are deep into your improvement, you don't have a food focus, you're having normal hunger signals, then absolutely start
Oh yeah.
incorporating it. But if it's been a long time that you haven't had it and your calories are still, within that range of like only a couple hundred more than what you were dieting on, because your metabolism changes when your body is smaller. Everything down regulates. And so, you were trying to create a deficit all these weeks leading
Yeah.
into a show. So with the cardio taper, we want to try to pull out those adaptations slowly. So you don't want to quit your cardio cold turkey, especially if you're doing a lot of cardio leading into the show, because that was a lot of calories that were getting burned. Your body adapted to that. So you got to start slowly pulling out those adaptations. So whether you kind of hit the calorie adaptation first, or you hit the movement goal first, it's really just the client's preference. But those are some things that you want to keep in mind when you are post show. You don't want to just like, stop tracking 100%. You don't want to just stop doing cardio 100%. You got to slowly pull those adaptations out of your body and allow it to adjust. So we did a deload for you the week after the show. Do you want to tell the audience kind of like what that looks like compared to your normal training?
Yeah, basically you gave me, a program that was, I think you gave me a percentage. So lift this percent of what you normally lift.
Hmm.
And the first couple of days was great. I took a complete rest day. I think I might have taken two because we had travel days. So two complete rest days. That was great. I just got cardio in, just got steps in, felt great. By the time I got back into the gym, I was kind of ready to go. Like, it's really hard for me to back off in the gym. So by following the deload, I felt like once the deload was over, it was like raring to go. And so once I got to go back to lifting heavy, it was like I could tell my body was just ready for it. But
Yeah.
I was glad that I was a good girl and followed the deload and went. Like, there were times I left the gym, I was like, did I even work out? But I was moving my muscles, I was getting flow through them, but at the same time, not pushing it too hard to let my body recover. And I think that helped a lot because once we went back to lifting heavy, I was able to see some progress pretty fast. So,
Yeah, and deloads, if somebody's doing like 5 days a week, you wanna bring them down to 4. If they're doing 6 days, maybe even bring them down to 4. You're gonna be extremely sore after a show because all that posing and all that stage time, you're gonna feel like you kinda got hit by a truck. So, it's important to do the deload and allow your time, for your body to heal, recover, and then, like you said, um, the one caveat, though, I would say is, like, just don't try to push so hard, especially if you kinda overdid it post-show. You had a lot of calories and you're like, "Oh, I wanna put these calories to good work." You're gonna end up injuring yourself because your body is not used to that kind of intensity. So it's important to kind of like ease your way back into things so you're not getting like so sore. So that kind of leads us, it segues us into the post show training. So what I do for my athletes is the week after their show, I give them a deload plan. And then based on judges' feedback and based on if I'm at the show, kind of, if we haven't heard from the judge yet, within that week of the deload, then if I'm at the show, then I'm able to kind of give an assessment. Or if I'm not at the show, by then the stage shots are up and I can give kind of like a new training block that is targeted on the areas that the athlete needs growth. And then I also try to start pulling down steps in cardio if that's like our first priority goal, versus the calories, like I had mentioned before. So, based on judges' feedback, do you want to share what your judges' feedback was?
yeah, I was so pleased with my judges' feedback. I was expecting to get the same feedback as I got last year. So last year, my feedback was that I needed more size overall, and then especially in the glutes. So that's what we worked on really hard in the improvement season last year. This year, in my head, I just thought I was going to get the same feedback. Even though we looked at our side by side photos and we could definitely tell that we had put on some size. And so my feedback, the main points were that I do have a good structure for bikini, and I just need more muscle density. So to just keep going through improvement seasons and going through prep, keep competing and keep building onto the muscle that I already have and building that muscle density, which using those words I think was really, really wise of so the head judge was Becky Clausen. She was the one that gave you that feedback, Amy, for
Uh-huh.
me. And I love that she used those words because then I was able to go back and look at pictures of myself, compare them to pictures of the girls next to me, compare them to pictures of IFBB pros, and really see what she was saying about having the structure there, but then needing to see that dense muscle. And that just really encouraged me. I've just been repeating that and repeating that to myself. Just keep doing what you're doing. You have good structure. Just keep putting that, putting those muscles to work. Keep building onto them. Keep making them more dense.
Yeah, and you just entered the master's category. You're just 35, but you've only been doing hypertrophy training focused for like, you know, since you started your bodybuilding career where you changed from powerlifting, which was a completely different type of modality where you're, like working on just how much you weight you can push with
Mm.
the core compound lifts. Like, I mean, bench press, like if you're doing a heavy bench press, like,
Oh, I think we just lost you, Amy. But yeah, like what you were saying, definitely.
oh shoot,
No, I
it
got you.
totally,
It's
it
all
totally,
about technique and leverage and just figuring out how to get the most weight up. And it's not about time under tension or building muscle size or density or anything like that.
yeah, yeah. And she was like making the point, like that just it's a little bit more seasoning. So, these masters competitors, they've been around the game for a long time, so their muscles are very seasoned. And, the big key words that you want to hear is that you have the right shape, that you have the right structure. That's the foundation. And she said that you have a very good foundation. You just need to continue to build it. And I think, too, we've added a lot of size to your upper body. So obviously, we kind of just are going in the same direction that we know. I mean, I've done EMG tests on your glutes and things like that. So we know that the exercises specifically to your body that activate the glute muscles. And we saw a huge change in them within the last year from Ben Weeder to Ben Weeder. So these are things that, nuances that coaches, if they're in on every aspect of that competitor's, programming and things, is like I can I know exactly what you need, and that's completely different than, another body. And specifically, that's how I target it. And so that's what your post show training looked like, is just kind of building off that feedback and then moving forward with where we are and what lagging body parts need to move up. So I think we talked about, the post show. So what is in store for your next show? Because I always think it's very important to kind of like listen to the feedback, kind of get a game plan for the next year. So in your case, like with that kind of judges feedback, can you share with the audience kind of what we decided that would be the best route for you to go for your next goal?
Yes. So my goal for 2024 is obviously to build more muscle density. I also, with the reverse diet and the intuitive eating, I want to be able to reverse diet in a way that my metabolism kind of stays in check with my body fat percentage. I want to be able to stay within a closer range of my, excuse me, of my show day weight so that when I start a prep, I mean, obviously I know I'm pretty tall. I'm 5'10". I'm always with all the tall girls at the very end of the show. But so I do need to put on some body weight up from my show weight to add good quality muscle. But I don't want to put on too much body fat so that I have to diet as hard. My goal is to not have to prep as hard as we did this year so that I can keep the muscle that I built. But I would like to, I mean, we're planning on going through an improvement season through the first half of next year, kind of checking in around the, July, August point, and then I am planning on doing the Ben Weeder next year and then possibly Masters USA's, which is usually, I think you said it was usually a few weeks after the Ben
This
Weeder.
year it was the Saturday after. So Ben Weeder was on Friday and then it was on Saturday. But usually, when I've done it, it's been in December.
Mhm.
is one of those shows that kinda moves around. So, for those of you that are kind of looking into trying to set next year's goals, most of the national shows usually land on the same weekend, so it's easy to predict, like, "Hey, this is when that show's gonna be." We already know that Ben Weider is going to be November 16th next year. They just released the date as soon as that show is over, and usually the national calendar will come out right after the national meeting, which happened in Dallas this past weekend. So, we'll start to see those dates, but typically national shows, like if you think about Masters Nationals, like it's always the 3rd week of July or, you know, Universe, that's always 4th of July weekend. So, yeah, we're gonna kind of have those on our radar and we're gonna look to see when Masters USA's is. So hopefully they're not the same weekend. Those of you promoters out there, Muscle Contest and Gary Yuta, if you can do that for us.
You made a great.
Um, Lee.
Yes. Are you still there?
Okay. Yeah, your screen is frozen, but I can hear
Oh,
you.
no, I'm still here.
Okay. Your video is frozen from me on my end, but
Okay.
um before we go, let's talk about the holidays to come
Mhm.
and just kind of like how relationships and dealing with relatives and all of that good stuff that most competitors are going to be challenged with because a lot of times we have people that aren't involved in the sport that can kind of be, for lack of a better word, like a food pusher.
Mhm.
They just see, okay, well, she was like, you made this choice to do it, right? So hopefully you didn't make it feel like to your relatives that you were suffering so badly. But sometimes when they see that you're doing things differently and you're not eating, some of the normal like family favorites and things at the holidays, especially if you're a new competitor, kind of talk us through, some ideas that you have, like when you first started competing, if you ever had to deal with that or not.
Yeah, so my family is pretty understanding. I think I'm
Uh-huh.
blessed.
Yeah.
By I will get texts from my siblings or my mom and they'll be like, "Hey, do you have enough calories to go out with us tonight?" Or, "Hey, do you have enough carbs if I make popcorn?" So they kind of understand
Cool.
my way of eating and everything. And I always volunteer to make one of the protein sources that we have for
Okay.
a holiday. So I'm always like, "Well, I'll do turkey," or I'll, make. One time we had meatballs, and I was like, "Well, I'll make turkey meatballs, or I'll make the
Nice.
brunch." And then I made like an egg bake, and one of them had like veggies and egg whites. One of them had like eggs and cheese and sausage and stuff. So
Nice.
I always volunteer to bring a main dish that I know I can eat. And then I usually will bring a salad too, just contribute, whatever I can bring. And then I
Yeah.
have control over what goes into those ingredients. And
Mhm.
then what I have run into a little bit is that I also take personal training clients, and my personal training clients will bring me like cookies or fudge or things like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
They will want me to have them like in front of them. So I think the way that I kind of just get by it, like I will thank them profusely for it. I'll be like, "Wow, this is amazing. I can't wait to try it. I'm gonna save it for Christmas." Like I will take it with me and I'll let you know. And then like if I have that one day at Christmas where I try, a few different things and give them feedback, that's fine. But there definitely is that a little bit of a panic when a client walks into your gym with a plate full of brownies and you're like, "Oh no, want me to eat one right now. There's no way I can make that fit my calories." But just being super thankful and then having a quick excuse like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so thankful you brought me these. I'm gonna save them for
Yeah.
Christmas. I'll let you know," kind of thing. And then yeah, I've just been really blessed because my family kind of really understands. Of course, there
That's
are a
good.
few of just relax, Lee, have some, but they're very understanding of my goals and how tight I need to stay so that I can, maintain control of the reverse diet. I think for
Yeah.
me, harder to have just one. That makes it harder, like you said, especially if it's sugar. Like I kind of
Yeah.
rather not have one.
The
And
rabbit hole.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So But I definitely think taking something, being thankful and being like, I'm gonna save this for Christmas when I can, when I'm going to enjoy it. Christmas is my day to enjoy. And then they're not gonna be around at Christmas. They're not gonna know if you're not a brownies person, I'm not really a brownies person. I'm a cookie person. You bring me cookies, that's gonna be hard. You bring me brownies, I might take a little nibble just so I can tell you, oh my goodness, they were so amazing. And then my family really enjoyed them. But
Yeah, yeah.
polite and thankful, but quite firm in, "Nope, I'm good for today, but I'll save it and I'll enjoy it later."
Yeah. My parents are the same way where they'll be like, "Oh, do you have a refeed meal that we could go out to dinner when you come to visit?" Or, a lot of times my husband will cook, and they love for him to cook, and he makes things exactly how I love them, very healthy, and I know what ingredients he puts in them. So he'll make me like a special thing too if he ends up putting, like a sauce on something or like um he always makes it so that I have things where I can measure them out and I can still feel, like, included because it's basically part of the spread. He'll make my certain dishes that I like, and then some of the fan favorites for the kids, like, he usually will make some sort of, like, pasta or, some sort of, like, very delicious, like, carbs and things like that, that other people partake in, and maybe I don't as much. Sometimes I can if they fit in my macros, but yeah, the only person that really I think has been a food pusher for me, even after all these years, is like my brother. He really enjoys cooking, and
Mm,
he's kind of the opposite as Kevin. Like he'll put all the stuff in, and not really care. He's like 6'7", and he is so skinny, and he's been skinny his whole life. He's kind of like a garbage can. He can eat whatever.
mhm.
So he's not really conscious about, like, how he makes things, and making them in the most healthy way. He doesn't really care. So, sometimes I feel, like, a little bit bad when he cooks and, like, he'll kinda I can tell it kind of, like, hurts his feelings, like, if I
Oh,
don't eat something. So I try my best to, like,
yeah.
it just, like, if I know he's cooking, I'll be like, "Okay, I'm going to, you know, make sure I kind of, like, budget for that large meal," or, hopefully, if I have, like, a refeed or a free meal, I can use it when he's cooking, so he's not, like, too upset. But I think you kinda have to just, know who people are and know, like, what they hold valuable. Like, sometimes, like, people aren't gonna always understand where you're going with it, but, I think as long as we, show a little bit of, like, you know, throw them a little bit of a bone, like, if they, just to keep their
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the peace. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
Mhm.
does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, totally, definitely. And a lot of people, like you said, your brother, like their love language might be like cooking for you. And so
Yeah, yeah,
it is all about that. And often when it's stuff like that too, it can be a little easier maybe to just have a small bit because you sort of feel like you're doing it to them as a favor versus it's something you're really craving. I think that's another tip actually for the holidays is I love to bake and I love baking cookies for Christmas and everything.
I saw those on your story. I was like, "Ooh, those look
Follow
good."
me on Instagram, everyone. I am baking a lot, but I specifically will bake things that I'm not super tempted by on purpose. So, like gingerbread cookies, I made gingerbread cookies the other day. They're my dad's favorite, and I'm not a big gingerbread fan. So, it was perfect for me to make those and totally be not tempted by them at all versus, something that I might be tempted like the just straight up cut out sugar cookies with that white
Oh,
frosting.
yeah.
I love those. I let my
Yeah,
sister make those. I didn't even go near them. She made them this year. That was fine. I was not tempted at all. So kind of just picking and choosing those things too. You can still be part of the holidays, but you don't have to be tempted as much. And then one other tip too is watch what you consume. So if you're being tempted by a lot of sweet treats and holiday stuff, watch how much Food Network you watch or cooking shows or those YouTube channels where they just go all out cheat days and they review all the just don't put yourself through that. Watch other stuff. Watch
yeah.
dramas or watch sometimes I just go and I watch like footage from like the Olympia or like vlogs of like people training like really hard in the gym, and that's more motivating. So just kind of watch the amount of food content you let in your brain, because that can
Mhm.
really trigger some cravings too.
And sometimes, like, if you okay, so for your example, you see your family all the time, right? So I see my brother maybe once or twice a year. So sometimes it's not worth it to just like if it's not going to be a regular thing, you
Yeah.
might as well just like have that meal and not like stress about it.
Mhm.
Like for example, I go to Indiana once a year and I see my sister-in-law and she makes homemade cheesecake on Thanksgiving and I just I knew that I was gonna have the cheesecake, and I was gonna be fine with that because it's very delicious. Homemade, it's so
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
And it did not disappoint this year. It was like raspberry, like chocolate truffle. It was so good.
My goodness.
But I didn't stress about it, and I actually ended up kind of, like, dropping weight that week because I just didn't come into that meal with any stress, and I ate my regular meals, like, the whole rest of the day. I didn't cheat on my diet, like, the rest of the week. I stuck completely to my macros. So, I think if it's not something that, like, you're repetitively around, sometimes it's worth it to not, like, make a fuss about it and, like, just enjoy it and enjoy that moment, and similar to your intuitive eating days, it's like sometimes when we don't stress about those things and we just aren't super close to a show with that caveat, it's better to just enjoy it and move on and not feel guilt around it. And
Mhm.
that can be something to think about as well. And then just one last thought. I am thinking of one of my clients where she had a father that was very offended if she didn't eat the meal that he made for her every Sunday. So one thing that we did was we created a higher budget on Sunday and then like Monday through Saturday, we had our calories lower, so we kind of gauged what this typical meal that her dad would make for her every Sunday, and he had a lot of pride in her actually eating the whole thing. Um, so I know it was a little like it's a little different, but if you can think about like what is your average calories for the week too, that's another way to strategize. Like if you know you're gonna have like
Mhm.
X amount of calories on one certain day of the week, as long as the other days are a little bit lower, so you average out for the week the amount of calories that you wanna get, that's another way to work around it too, I think.
And I think the key to that too is something that you said with the cheesecake, is that you planned ahead. So by eating the cheesecake, since you had already decided it was going to be in your plan, you were still following your plan, which meant you didn't feel guilty, which meant it didn't spiral. So I think a lot of this, especially we're talking about like reverse dieting, if it's mental and we go off plan, we get into the effort mode like, oh, I already messed it up. It doesn't
Yep.
matter if I keep messing it up until I get to this point, like whether it's Monday or next week or whatever, then I'll start being good again. But if we can think ahead, like you planned with your athlete that had that meal, if you're following the plan, it's not going to mess with your head because you're actually executing it right. You're doing it right, even though you are eating something that's higher calorie. It probably makes it easier for you to stick to it the next day after that meal, because that was part of the plan. And so then the plan, you just keep doing the plan and you just feel successful, and that just rolls over. And so I think if someone is listening and they can communicate that to their coach, that would be amazing. But then
Mhm.
also try to be proactive instead of reactive. So
Yeah.
plan it ahead of time versus, oops, I did this. Now I've got to make up for it by under eating my calories.
Yep.
That's a slippery slope. So we're not saying that. We're not saying like if you overeat, undereat the next week so your average is the same. Don't do that. Keep following your plan, but plan ahead for next time. So be proactive and not reactive, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One other just public service announcement that I wanna give is just if you do fall off your diet, so if you fail on your reverse, don't punish yourself with extra cardio. That is the opposite of what you wanna do. That's like binging and purging.
Mhm.
It's just a different form through exercise. So it is not good for your body. Don't restrict yourself either because that will just perpetuate the cycle.
Mhm.
So if you go off the rails, you have a bad day, you binge, I would talk with your coach about it because they might want to just increase your baseline calories throughout, because that's better than, eating like 3 to 5,000 calories in a meal and then trying to restrict yourself to 1,200 calories. And then that cycle just keeps repeating. And
Mhm.
your average calories for the whole week is way overboard. When, if you find yourself snacking, maybe, let your coach know about it, so they might want to increase your baseline macros so that you can incorporate those snacks and not feel like you're doing something bad or wrong. Like, there's no good or bad in this. It's all about just, you know, not feeling that guilt, because that does spiral into some bad behaviors like you had mentioned as well.
And I mean, I had to do that with you too. I mean, I am not perfect. I Every time I mess up, I write it in my check-in. I'm like, Amy, on Thursday and Saturday, I went over on protein. I was hungry and I ate it and I'm owning it. And even those little things that might seem somebody might be like, oh, you ate an extra chicken breast, boo, that's nothing. To me, if I didn't tell you about that, I wasn't owning up to it. So
Yeah.
communicate with your coach. They are on your side and it helps for them to know, and then
Yeah.
you
It just
understand.
helps with the data, and then we understand, like, what's going around with your body, and then we can help you adjust. There's no judgment. I will never judge anyone because, trust me, I've done way worse. So, every single one of my clients, to all of you out there, you're like angels compared to me. So, I've d I've done it all, trust me. I've been through all of it, and I know how hard post-show
Wow.
is, and I know how hard a reverse is to follow. It is very difficult. So, sometimes it's better to just go into a recovery diet, but you need to give your coach that opportunity to intervene in that way, so that they're not gonna judge you, but they're gonna help you and they're gonna support you and get you through it in the best way that they know possible. But they only know what they know. So, one more what is it? Public service announcement, PSA. Don't hide from your coach. Don't stop checking in or stop sending pictures because you feel bloated or gross. Just own up to it. Send them in every week. I guarantee you it is not as bad as you think. It's just that we have a little bit of body dysmorphia when it comes to being like so stage lean, and then we're not used to our bodies changing, especially if it's your first show. It's just really hard to see yourself moving in the opposite direction that it's been going for the whole year. So give yourself some grace. Hang in there. We're all rooting for you over here at Glam Girl. And if you would like to find us on Instagram, you can go to Prep Life Podcast and find us there. You can tag us on your story if you like this episode or you found value in it. Please share a rating or review. That just helps other people that are interested in the same topics find us. You can also find us on Instagram at Glam Girl Bikini, and you can apply for your unicorn prep at glamgirlbikini.com. And we do have our end of the year low price packages for our VIP. They are discounted until December 31st. So, Leemarie, if you can put that link in the show notes, really good deals on our 48, our 24, and our 16-week packages. So, with that, we will sign off. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Enger, signing off with Coach Leemarie Hostetter. Have
Thank
a good one.
you.